It's kind of like the example that Blake was just sharing with you. One of our clients, we called out these two people who were doing really great work on this, and one of them said, actually, it's really more the other guy, not me. And another part of that story too that Blake forgot about probably is that when the guy replied back, he goes, "Yeah, you're right. I'm really excited to tackle all of this together." Welcome back to the Culture Based Podcast. I'm Dustin. He's Blake. This is episode 78. We've reached the end of February. 2025 is rolling by. Today is 2/25/25. In the year 2/25/25. It's an old song.
Is that a song?
Well, the second half of it is. It's like a Simon and Garfunkel tune from like the 70s. It's like in the year 25/25.
Okay.
But yeah. That's why everybody tuned in. They wanted to hear me sing some Simon and Garfunkel remix that I just spouted out after the intro. Look, I'm fresh off of, as the intro was winding down, I was like, is my phone on silent? What disturb is it on? So we're here. We're with you. Today we're talking about building employee engagement through recognition programs. Should be a shorter episode. It's going to be one of those like really long books that could be one sentence long. So we're going to try to make it one sentence long as best we can. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and develop scalable teams to get them there. If you're listening on an audio podcast platform, would appreciate a high 5-star. I'd like to say high 5-star, not just a 5-star. Give me a high 5-star rating and review, whatever your platform allows. If you're watching on YouTube, we're so glad that you're here. If not, you can find us on YouTube at The Culture Base, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all those places at The Culture Base, BASE. You can find us online as well at theculturebase.com. And while you're there, we got a couple free things for you. Shoot on over to theculturebase.com/resources to get your free scalability playbook, the best interview questions ever, a free PDF guide, and Uncultured by the one and only Blake Bauer. Has anyone ever tried to get like super weird with the pronunciation of your last name, and because the H is throwing them off? Are they like Bauer?
Yeah, back in the day when we had telephones in your house that were corded and everything. Anytime they would be like, "Yes, is Mrs. Burr there?" And my mom would hand me the phone and I'd do my thing, And
you'd do Mrs. Burr?
And I'd be like, "Hello." Just let them know that if they don't know our last name, you don't know us.
I love it. It's coming up here. Probably we're getting close to episode 100. I think we need to have Miss Burr on as a guest.
Miss Burr.
Just interview her about Carter.
Like Larry Johnson when he was grandmama.
Yeah. Interview Miss Burr about Carter. Okay. Today I'm super excited to get into this recognition program. Recognition, super important. Let's paint the problem for you real quick as soon as I figure out where the problem button is. Here it is. I found it. All right, Blake, what's the dealio? What's the problem with these current or non-existent employee recognition programs?
Yeah, number one is they don't exist, right? And I think there's a paradigm. I think the paradigm that a lot of teams and really leaders of the team struggle with is, why would everyone's afraid to give the participation trophy because they don't love the idea of the participation trophy. And I'm going to let you know, I don't love the idea of the participation trophy. But this mentality of I'm not just going to give them a thumbs up every time they do something good has gotten so ingrained in us that we don't realize that we're never giving thumbs up, right? Like we're never saying
the extremes, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So because we're so afraid of becoming the one thing, we go all the way over to the other. Like, look at parenting through the generations. It's so interesting to be like, man, my parents were just like this, this, and this, and I'll never do that. And they do the extreme opposite. And then their kids end up doing the extreme opposite. And so you have this like accordion feature going through the family years. But at the end of the day, like, not having any recognition is going to do more damage than giving a lot of pats on the back, right? And we want to give this idea of like, even though you're getting paid to do your job, like, and if we got down to just the facts, the brass tacks of what employment is, sure. An employee says, I will give my time for money, and that's the transaction between employer and employee.
Yeah.
But you're going to get the bare minimum of both of those things, the money and the time, right? Like that's it. Recognition drives creativity. It drives drive. It drives like excitement to be where you are. You produce different stuff. The problem is we don't have recognition programs, and they don't even have to be, by the way, and we'll talk about this more, but we don't have to have like every time they do a good thing, they get a gold star. And then after they get 3 gold stars, they get a Shroot Buck. And after they get a Shroot Buck, like we don't have to do that. Yeah. A lot of this stuff can be internally, but like some of this stuff is just simple. It's just simple, right? Gallup, the organizational psychology, and like the organization that gets all like the, what are those called? Surveys and stuff for employment. Someone feels connected in their team and like they have a good positive work environment by having one authentically good thing said to them by their manager or a direct report in the past 7 days. That's pretty low. You know, like that's like you can almost trip and on accident say good job and get that kind of a result. Right?
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I think people are afraid, well, if I start saying it to one person, I'm gonna have to say it to everyone. And yeah, okay. But like that positive reinforcement of what they did was right. And even though, yes, the money, like that's the problem. Everyone gets the money, right? If they're working for you and they stay employed with you, everyone gets that as the thing. Right. What's the differentiator between a good worker and a bad worker then? If they all get the money of what you promised, then there is no differentiator. The differentiator needs to be you're doing an awesome job, and you don't give those out free. You give those out for good, awesome job. Yeah. It's something authentic. If they're not doing a good job, have a pip with them. Okay. But don't just let it go and not give recognition to those who are actually doing well. So
PIP is a TLA for Performance Improvement Plan.
Thank you. Thank you. TLA is a 3-letter acronym.
Yeah. Do you ever, when you listen to Smart List, they always talk about one of their sisters' name's Tracy, who doesn't really know anything about Hollywood. So usually when there's like a TLA that comes up, I'm like, I need to speak to Tracy here, who doesn't know what these 3-letter acronyms are. No. Yeah. So the problem, right, is that it doesn't exist, or it's super ineffective, or it's super inconsistent, or you're overdoing it. It's recognition fatigue, and people are relying on that model and method. And after a while, enough is not enough anymore. Does that make sense? So you just consume. Enough isn't enough anymore. But that's not a reason to not have it at all. Lastly, a problem too is misaligned incentives, right? Like, oh, why did I get rewarded for this? I thought we were about making this, but you rewarded me for that. So those are the problems. Let's dig into the solution. All right, I think the first solution that you need to hit here is you actually need to put some intentionality behind it. And really, that's what Culture 101 is, right? Is it doesn't exist without intentionality. A plan is a plan, that's great. Action is action, that's great. But intentionality is where a plan meets action. I just made that up. Is that a thing? Did I say that? Intentionality is where a plan meets action, and that's how you get good culture. And so what you need to do is in order to create a good recognition culture, you need to do a couple of things. You need to design one that aligns with the company values. That's what we just talked about in the last problem, right? If you reward people for excellence, but excellence isn't a culture value, then it doesn't matter as much. But it carries more weight if one of your culture values, for example, is we is greater than me. It carries more weight if you involve more people in the process to accomplish greater things, and then that gets celebrated.
Yeah. Can I say something specifically about that? Because like it is so cool as well. Like you as the one who's giving the recognition or trying to create a culture of recognition, as you go through those moments and you start to see those culture things that are really important to you actually exemplified, I'll tell you what, there is I'm not going to say no amount of profit, but there is a very little, or it had to be a ton of profit to be worth the dopamine hit you get when you see behavior changed. Okay. Yeah. So for example, that we, not me, or the we is greater than me value, to see your team, like we had this happen recently. There's a development program going on. And actually Culture Base is helping with it. It's pretty cool. Training development program that we're implementing with a client. And inside that team, it was like, hey, you guys have done a really good job at building this. And one of the other team members jumps up and says, actually, it was the other team member who's been doing almost everything. And they've been killing it. And I'm just super proud of them. And all I've been doing is really just add in a little bit here. But they deserve the recognition on this. That kind of environment hasn't always been there. And so like to see that, and then all of a sudden to see the other person say, hey, I really appreciate that. I'm really excited to build this. And then to see down line, like the next day, that person all of a sudden starting to see true recognition points and giving it, it's contagious. Yeah. When you start having that kind of a contagious recognition of culture values, that's when you start to see behavior change. Because then if it's recognized, then the anti-value of that is also recognized. And so we're going to call those things out. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just felt like that was
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I love it. Yeah. So we're going to build, we're going to align it with the company values. We're going to build both formal and informal recognition channels. And what this means is there needs to be every day, once a week, every 7-day kind of thing, like Blake was saying. But also, like if you're going to have a company Christmas party, don't just be like, well, I bought you a bunch of booze, but also like go the extra mile, make a $2 dumb trophy that says the always wears a green shirt award, like, stuff like that. Right. But also carry the weight too of, oh man, you really exemplified we is greater than me more than anyone else this year. And we want to honor and thank you. Here's a stupid little award that's going to mean a lot more to you. You can put it on your shelf at home. Your family can be proud of you. And I know it sounds like we're downplaying it, but it really, like Blake said, if you're worried about the bottom dollar and that's all you're worried about, fix that. But also, if that's all you're currently worried about, just know how much more that's going to return on your investment over time. And that's what good culture does.
Well, and the thing too, you'll have people who are like, oh, I don't want any kind of awards. I don't want recognition. And those awards, I'd rather just have the money that the reward would have taken. Mm-hmm. First off, that's a fixed mindset that doesn't really know the power of something like an award. Okay. Right. Like the thing is, if I gave, let's say the award cost $40, okay, that we would give them $40 instead of the award. What do they remember about that $40 award? Nothing. They don't have a visual. They don't have a context that brings them back to a moment where they were celebrated for a good reason.
In front of their peers.
Y'all can't see it, but right over here, I have awards from things that I've done. And every time I walk in, even the dumb ones, I'm going to grab a dumb one. This is from our culture, or from the Ridgeline Awards this year. I got the travel champion. I don't know how much this costs. I don't care. It's funny because I walk in.
It's $2.
It was $2. Okay. I walk in. I see this little award, and it takes me back to a moment that was impactful. And it takes me to say, you know what? And I'm not like, that's right, I'm the travel champion. No, that's not the point. The point is it brings you back to an experience where you connected with people, and you get to keep reliving that. And you get to keep remembering, I want to be about excellence. I want to be about these culture things. So that's why people who say they want that one thing, maybe, but really I think it's because they don't know what true celebration and recognition really are.
Yeah, they haven't really experienced it yet. So we'll breeze right on through here some of these other solutions, but I think you get it right. You can connect it directly to the organizational values. Peer-to-peer recognition programs go a long way. It's kind of like the example that Blake was just sharing with you. One of our clients, we called out these two people who were doing really great work on this, and one of them said, actually, it's really more the other guy, not me. And another part of that story too that Blake forgot about probably is that when the guy replied back, he goes, "Yeah, you're right. I'm really excited to tackle all of this together." That's culture, and that's culture being built. Like, you can hear the jackhammer, you can hear the construction going on. We're building some culture here, just through a stupid little email thread, because we went the extra mile. Someone went the extra mile to say, some peer went the extra mile to say, give props to this person because they're the ones doing a lot of the hard work. So it's contagious, like Blake said. At the end of the day, you celebrate what you want repeated, right? So if someone's taking initiative and you're like, that's what I'm talking about, that's what I've been saying, don't just leave that to yourself, but blast it from the rooftops and go, this is what I'm talking. This is when I say that we is greater than me. I know we're just using that example throughout the whole episode, which is fine. But when I say we is greater than me, this is what I'm talking about. This guy took initiative to bring other team members in when he didn't have to. He wasn't instructed to. And because of that, this project is going better than it ever could have if the leaders would have sat in the boardroom and decided to design it themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So you celebrate what you want repeated. That's the solution when it comes to employee recognition programs. Anything you want to add to the solution, Blake?
No.
All right, let's get into a couple of action steps.
I'll take the action steps.
That was me. That was me going, you take this.
Okay. I counted 1,000, 2. I'm in. Jump in. All right. So action steps. We'll start off with leaders, because very similar to that story that we shared about recognition and celebrating one another, someone's got to take the first step. Someone's got to be vulnerable. Someone's got to do what's uncomfortable, because it is both uncomfortable, especially if you're not used to it, to give recognition, but it's also uncomfortable to receive it when a culture hasn't celebrated it all the time. Okay. And that's actually, like, even in when I wrote in Uncultured, one of the things I talk about is, if you want to know what kind of culture you have and whether you have a healthy culture or not, one simple thing you can do is walk up to someone in the shop and give them a real heartfelt compliment and see if they shrink away from it, or if they're hesitant, or if they're not sure that, like, if they get awkward and they're like, thanks. Chances are you haven't had a celebratory culture, or a culture that is probably very healthy, right?
Yeah, but embrace the awkward.
Oh yeah,
embrace the awkward. Yeah,
that's
it's
right.
gonna be awkward in the first little bit. They're gonna be like, "What? Are you okay?"
Yeah,
this is not something that you normally do. Did you hit your head?
Yeah.
Are you going through? Are you dying?
Yeah.
Like, what's happening here? It's gonna get weird for a minute. Just embrace the weird.
Yeah.
Embrace the weird. Embrace the uncomfortable. You got to where you're at, leader. You got to where you're at in business because you embraced discomfort.
Yep.
And just embrace it here too. Exactly.
And it's also okay to be like, if they're like, am I getting fired? To be like, no, you're not. This is an area this is an area I need to get better at. And I've recognized I haven't done a good job of it. And so I just want to make sure that when I see these things, I say something too. Right? Yeah. So anyway, leaders, create some kind of recognition plan for your team, which means the intentionality side Dustin was talking about. Maybe as you hear stories, capture stories. As you hear stories out on the floor, out in the field, in the office, capture those stories some way to say, oh, I want to give specific recognition.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, hey, you're doing a swell job. Be like, hey, I saw that service order go through and how you caught this. Way to go. That was awesome. Way to be attentive to what we're doing. That's the way we're going to get better. Yep. Okay. So look for specific moments. this recognition plan doesn't have to be robust. It just, like Dustin says, has to be intentional and it has to be consistent. Okay. Yeah. So schedule time on your calendar to go see things and go say things to people. Okay. So create some kind of cadence to it. And that's where that whole like documenting the stories, documenting the things you hear, and save them too. Sometimes, and I've realized this, I love coming to someone, and this happened yesterday at our notes day. I heard about something that happened about this person 4 weeks ago, and I kept it. I wrote it down. And I said, I want to give this one to them in person. And I don't want it to be right on the cusp of it happening, because then it just feels responsive. Right. And so I saw him yesterday and I said, hey, a buddy of mine who runs that business over there saw you doing this and he told me about it. And I just want to tell you, like, he was raving about you. And I just can't tell you how much that means to me that you are holding to these things. And he was like, oh man, thanks. And he was like, that just warms my heart. Thanks for saying that. Like, and he literally said those words, like, I needed that. And I don't think we get that. We don't know everyone's outside story. We just know when they're here. And so giving that kind of recognition might be the only recognition they ever receive.
That's right.
Keep that in mind.
That's right. For team members, listen, it's really repetitive week to week when we get to the action steps for team members, but be the change that you want to see. If you want to see this in your organization, just start doing it. And if you're like, this needs to be formalized into more of an actual program, which it does need to be because you need to put the effort into, then build it, create it, and hand it over to your team leaders. And if your team leaders are not accepting of this type of recognition, you have two choices. You can either just continue to do it informally the way that you've done it and build a culture that way. That's a long game. Or go find another company where they do appreciate their employees and they want that recognition. So you want the change, be the change. If it doesn't exist, create it. Anything you want to add to that, Blake?
No, that was beautiful.
That's beautiful. It's heartwarming. All right. So next time we're going to be back with you, episode 79, developing a growth mindset culture. I'm super pumped to get into that episode with you. We'll talk to you next week on the Culture Base Podcast.